Adam Schefter has a list of some notable veteran players that could very well be part of trade conversations coming up by the November 4th trade deadline. He's got 5 New Orleans Saints listed. So I wanted to bring Ross Jackson on from Louisiana Sports Net to talk about this. Like, who's realistically potentially on the market? What might they command? What are the Saints thinking? Ross, we appreciate it, man. How are you?
Yeah, man, of course. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Our pleasure. Let's start with the 2 veterans that I think everybody wants to talk about first. It's Alvin Kamara and Cam Jordan. Maybe the biggest thing with these 2 guys, Ross, is, like, do they even want to be traded, or are they just dead set on finishing their careers in New Orleans, even if it's, on losing teams?
Yeah, I think that's going to always be kind of the question when it comes to those guys and when it comes to these conversations. The fact of the matter is that neither of those guys want to go anywhere. Both of those guys very much want to finish their careers here in New Orleans. Alvin Kamara has been very kind of upfront about that over the course of the past few years. I mean, we've asked him over at Louisiana Sports Net. We've asked him before during training camp, things like that. You go back, Cam got his extension just a couple of years ago, and we asked Alvin Kamara about, hey, what are your thoughts on Cam Jordan's extension? He said, I don't want to talk about Cam. I want to talk about me. When am I getting mine? I want to finish my career here. And so that's very much been the MO around Alvin Kamara for some time. There was a recent report as well that came out about that sort of talked about how Mickey Loomis, the general manager, approached Alvin Kamara and said, hey, if there's an opportunity, would you like to go? And by all accounts, his answer was that he wants to be here in New Orleans. And we know that Cam Jordan, just like his father, wants to be a lifer. His dad, Steve Jordan, was a lifer with the Minnesota Vikings as a tight end. He wants the same thing in New Orleans. So when you have a couple of guys like that are effectively the faces of your franchise that don't want to go anywhere, very likely those guys aren't going to be on the move.
Does it, that notwithstanding, would it make sense for the Saints to try to move either of those guys?
It depends on the return that you get for them. The thing that's so tricky about that is, any team would have a question about how many years they're going to get from a Cam Jordan if they were to make a move. And therefore, the investment at that position, for that trade, even regardless to his position, which is a premier position as an edge rusher, you're probably not going to get enough of a return to make that worth it unless you're really starving for a day 3 pick or something like that. Alvin Kamara is a little bit trickier. You're talking about a running back, which is a position that doesn't carry a lot of trade value in the league. You're talking about a running back that's staring down the age of 30. That gets even less trade value in the league. So maybe if there's an unexpected offer that maybe makes sense for the Saints, it might send him to a competitor, like let's say the Kansas City Chiefs feel they're one explosive running back away, then maybe you revisit that conversation with him. But based on the fact that the Saints apparently went so far as to have the conversation with him before pulling the trigger, it feels very much like they are willing to take into consideration what these players want more than just what might net them, some draft value.
There's 3 other receivers that are listed, Brandon Cooks, and then 2 young guys with Rasheed Shaheed and Chris Olave. Let's start with the veteran in Cooks. He's just back now for 6 games in his second stint with the Saints. Is there any market value for a guy like Cooks, especially considering the multi-year contract he just signed in New Orleans?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know if I can name a wide receiver that's had more trade value in the NFL than Brandon Cooks, right? This guy,
Noted.
The idea that, the Saints sign him this offseason and they could potentially trade him is, if I can drop my, journalist cap for a moment and just put on my normal human being cap, I would say that's absolutely insane. Like, that's crazy. That's wild. And so maybe so. I mean, there's clearly trade value around him, and there has been for the majority of his career. But he is somebody that obviously is coming off a big injury last year, too, so that's got to be factored in. But he has been healthy, although underutilized here in New Orleans so far. Or I shouldn't say underutilized, but hasn't had, the wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 impact, which was never the expectation around him. So if a team's willing to give up something for him that's greater than the value that the Saints are getting right now, which would not be a huge ask, especially knowing that you've got young guys like Mason Tipton and Devon Vele already in the building, and the potential return eventually of other players that could potentially contribute there at the wide receiver position, he would be the one that would make the most sense to move, only if the return is better than you might expect for a receiver his age.
What do you think would be a return better than you might expect?
I think if you got anything over a 4th-round pick for him, that would probably at least start the conversation. Anything in day 2 or day 1 would probably be the conversation. I mean, that would be a pretty easy decision to make, especially when you have a similar style receiver like a Mason Tipton that's waiting there. But a 4th or a 5th round pick is probably one of those pieces that's maybe a little bit better than you might expect. That would be enough to maybe get that conversation.
Which begs the question why they signed a small, aging, lacking production wide receiver. Oh, never mind. Okay.
Well, especially to not utilize him, right? To not have him be a big part of the game plan, and then you also traded a 4th for Devon Bailey, who has not been a part of the game plan. There's absolutely some questions there.
I'm just going to start in on Gumsmack and Mick again, and I don't want to put you in a bad spot. All right, so let's talk about the other guys that might be more realistic, and it's Chris Olave and Rasheed Shaheed. Young guys with a lot of career runway still in front of them, and guys that may command a greater asset. Let's start with Olave. If you would, Ross, start just working us through the mechanics of where he is in his contract and what would have to happen for a team to be interested in making a move for Olave.
Yeah. Actually, one of the things that makes Olave such a tradable asset is his contract. He is in the 4th year of his rookie deal. The 5th-year option has been picked up already, and I believe that hovers around $15, $16 million, depending upon what the contracts of wide receivers look like at the time that contract were to set in. But that should hover around that area. And so giving a team full control over contract negotiations, that's a favorable situation for a team that's trading to acquire a talented player like Chris Olave. So his contract, just to start there, is very, very tradable and would make him a desirable piece on the market.
What do you think? You used a 1st-round pick on Chris Olave. It's hard to imagine getting a 1st-round pick. What would be an asset that you think would be worth moving him?
Yeah, I think you move the conversation from 1st-round pick to 1st-round value. And so you're looking at a 2nd-round pick and a little bit of pocket change to kind of help get that pick value up. The typical wide receiver trade around the NFL, as we've seen, is a 2nd and a 5th-round pick. I think that would be enough for the Saints to decide, okay, look, what you're losing here, the value of what you're gaining in potential in terms of draft capital and investment is enough to maybe take that hit for this year and next year. So 2nd and 5th is the typical number 1 wide receiver or number 1 option in a passing game kind of trade that I feel like would at least get the conversation going. The conversation is never really going to be about should the Saints trade Chris Olave. It's more should the Saints receive what it is that they're going after, right? So it's got to be about what that compensation is. I think that would probably be pretty close to a workable amount.
So you're saying, but I don't want to misunderstand, you're saying that if the compensation were there, they should trade Chris Olave.
Yeah, I think as long as you're able to say that what you're getting to you as an organization, which varies over 32 teams, is greater than that which you are losing, then it makes sense to pull that trigger and then figure it out from there. It doesn't matter whether or not, Chris Olave should or shouldn't be traded. That's not really a part of the conversation, right? He's a talented player. He's on an agreeable contract. He would fill a void for a bunch of teams, and you have an opportunity to negotiate his future as an acquiring team to your liking and to your comfort. You're not inheriting somebody else's negotiated contract. All of those things make somebody a tradable asset. It's not really like, should they get rid of the player? It's never really getting rid of the player. It's gaining something in return. So it's really about the return more than it is about what you're losing.
And then Rasheed Shaheed, what's the opportunity there?
Yeah, so that one's a really interesting one because I think part of the conversation that you have to have with this one is understanding what his market value is in free agency, because he's going into free agency after this year. And so with that, if he were to sign somewhere and get a big enough contract, you could be in store as the New Orleans Saints for a 3rd-round pick in 2027 as a compensatory selection. So can you get a 3rd-round pick in 2026? Is that enough to move the needle for you? If you can't get the value of what would be a 3rd-round pick in 2027, then you're probably not moving that player, and you're willing to kind of go into the offseason with him, not re-signed, and looking to see what you might return that way, or trying to figure out if you can get a contract done with him, which we assume would be a cheaper contract to get a hold of rather than Chris Olave's contract, for instance.
Is there any other player that you think could enter these conversations?
Pete Werner, the linebacker, is definitely one. I mean, we're not talking about day one, day two compensation there or anything, but he's definitely one that you're watching out for. They, invested highly in Danny Stutzman. They've been getting a look at Stutzman as well as Isaiah Stalbert over the course of the past couple of weeks. And so he would be a player that would make some sense when it comes to those conversations. And then, if you're going to move a player and you want to try to get the biggest return that you can for them, getting a guy, moving somebody that's going to be moving a guy at a prime position or a premier position is a good way to get some of that, nice draft capital back. And so I would imagine that a guy like Carl Granderson could be a part of that conversation as well, because you would get good compensation for a talented player at a premier position.
He is Ross Jackson, LouisianaSports.net. Of course, you can read him there. If you want to listen or watch, it's the Locked On Saints podcast. So make sure you're subscribed over on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube to Locked On Saints. And, of course, you can read Ross always for free over at LouisianaSports.net. I understand you're going to have a piece on this tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of this conversation is understanding the difference between what a tradable asset is and a player that should be traded. None of this stuff is about a player that you're advocating to get moved or anything like that. It's all about the value. So we're going to list out each one of these players and then take a look at kind of top end and bottom end value that you could potentially get for them based on historical trades at the same position.
All right. Unless it's Chris Olave, I'm ready to see him gone. Just get rid of him. If you're not going to make a contested catch, get out of here. I don't want to see you anymore.
Well, you're dropping his trade value if you're moving him because you're mad at him.
Don't care.
What I mean?
Don't care. Get him out of here. Get him out of here. This is pissed off Sean Payton cutting a kicker the next day or throwing the challenge flag just because he's mad. That's how I feel right now. Like the worst. Did Sean Payton have the worst challenge success rate in the history of the NFL? Had to. He was just like a pissed off teenager.
I can find that.
Just throw the red flag. Throw the red flag because I'm pissed off.
He would throw it. It felt like he would throw it sometimes because he needed to throw something or because he just wanted to make the officials do something he wanted them to do.
That's exactly
So if I throw the challenge flag, you have to go and look at the thing. Great, I'll take that win.
He'll give up a timeout to do it. It's just like whenever he drafted, who was the kid from Tommy Stevens? Wasted a draft pick for someone that wasn't going to make the team just because someone said he couldn't. It's like, oh, no, you're going to Carolina. No, you're not. I'm trading up and I'm drafting you. So you can't, even though I'm cutting you. That's how I feel right now about Olave. I don't care how nonsensical it is. I'm pissed off and I want him gone. So get rid of him. Make it happen, Ross. Make it happen. Okay, he's Ross Jackson on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola. Give him a follow. Thank you, dude.
Thank you, bud. Take care. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Be well. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.